The house sat at the end of a lonely cul-de-sac, its yellowing curtains drawn tightly shut against the California sun. No one ever saw the children come or go. Neighbors would pass by and glance at the sagging roof, the paint peeling like old skin, but they would simply shrug and keep walking. After all, in a neighborhood of strangers, what was one more secret house? Inside, the air was thick and stale, saturated with the stink of unwashed bodies, mildew and rot. 13 children moved like shadows, their bare feet silent on the cracked linoleum. They did not speak, they did not laugh, they did not cry. Only whispers filled the silence, soft and fleeting, snatched away by the heavy heat that pressed down on them like an invisible hand. Jordan, the 17th child, crouched in the corner of a cramped bedroom, her knees drawn tight against her chest. Her eyes, wide and dark, flicked toward the locked door. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest, the rhythm loud in her ears. Tonight, she thought, tonight I run. For as long as she could remember, the house had been her whole world, a prison of peeling walls and broken dreams. Her parents, David and Louise, were the wardens, their word law, their punishments swift and brutal. The rules were simple. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not leave your room without permission. Do not eat unless given food. Do not tell. Most days, the children were chained to their beds for hours, sometimes days, without food or water. Filth caked their bodies. Their teeth were rotting in their mouths. Their hair hung in greasy mats over their hollowed faces. Still, they clung to one another, finding comfort in shared misery. Whispers in the dark were their only rebellion, their only hope. Jordan pressed her ear against the door. She heard the creak of the front porch, the low mumble of David's voice, the shrill laugh of Louise. They were distracted, drunk, maybe. Fighting, it was always worse when they fought. Slowly, silently, she slid the coat hanger she had hidden from the back of the closet into the lock. Her hands shook. She had never done this before. If she was caught, don't think about it. Just do it. The lock clicked. She froze, her breath hitching in her throat. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the house groaned under the weight of its secrets, and Jordan slipped out into the hallway. The hallway was a tunnel of darkness, the only light a sliver of moonlight leaking through a crack in the boarded-up window. She moved quickly, her bare feet whispering over the stained carpet. Past the bedroom where her younger sisters slept, tangled together like puppies. Past the living room where the television played endless reruns to an empty room. Past the kitchen where crusted plates and broken dreams littered the counters. At the front door, she hesitated. The lock was high, too high for her to reach without a chair, but a broken stool leaned drunkenly against the wall, and with a strength she didn't know she had, she dragged it over and climbed up. The bolt was stiff, rusted from years of disuse. She gritted her teeth and yanked with all her might. It gave way with a loud snap. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then Jordan wrenched the door open and ran into the night. The air outside was sharp and cool, shocking against her skin. She stumbled barefoot onto the cracked sidewalk, heart hammering in terror and exhilaration. The world was so big, so wide, so impossibly open. For a moment, she stood frozen, overwhelmed. Then a dog barked somewhere nearby, and fear kicked her into motion. She ran. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't even know what she was looking for. All she knew was that she had to get away. Lights blurred past her. Street lamps, porch lights, headlights, each one a beacon and a threat. She flinched at every sound, the rumble of a distant car, the rustle of leaves, the faint wail of a siren. Every shadow was a monster. Every noise was David's heavy footsteps pounding after her. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs threatened to collapse beneath her. She ran until she saw a figure up ahead, a man walking a small dog, his face illuminated by the glow of his cell phone. Jordan stumbled toward him, tears streaming down her face. "Help," she croaked. Her voice was barely a whisper, raw from disuse. The man looked up, startled. His eyes widened at the sight of her. A thin, filthy girl in torn clothes, her hair matted, her skin pale as the moon. "My God," he said. "Are you all right?" Jordan shook her head violently. "Help, please." He fumbled for his phone. "I'm calling 911, okay? Stay with me." For the first time in her life, Jordan felt a flicker of hope. Tiny, fragile, but real. The nightmare was almost over. Or so she thought. The police arrived within minutes, lights flashing red and blue against the darkness. Jordan huddled on the curb, shivering, answering questions in halting, broken sentences. "There are others," she said. "At the house, please. Help them." Two officers exchanged a glance, disbelief, pity, something harder to name. "Can you take us there?" one asked gently. Jordan nodded. They helped her into the back of the squad car, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, and drove slowly back through the maze of suburban streets. As they pulled up to the sagging house at the end of the cul-de-sac, Jordan's stomach twisted with fear. The porch light was on. The front door stood ajar. Something was wrong. Terribly, terribly wrong. The squad car idled at the curb, its engine murmuring like a restless beast. Officer Daniels stepped out first, hand resting lightly on the butt of his holstered gun. His partner, Officer Reeves, moved more cautiously, his flashlight slicing through the dark like a blade. Jordan sat frozen in the back seat, her fingers twisting the edges of the blanket. Her heart pounded against her ribs, a trapped bird desperate to escape. The front door swung lazily in the breeze, creaking like an old man's sigh. "Stay here," Daniel said over his shoulder. Jordan nodded, her throat too tight for words. The two officers approached the house, their boots crunching softly over the dead grass. Daniels knocked once, twice, a perfunctory tap that echoed in the stillness. No answer. He pushed the door wider with the toe of his boot. The stench hit them like a physical blow, the sour reek of rot, urine, and despair. Reeves gagged, lifting his sleeve to his nose. Daniels swept his flashlight across the living room. Trash was piled knee-deep, rotting food containers, broken furniture, moldy clothes. Amid the chaos, a threadbare couch leaned drunkenly against the wall, its cushions stained dark with old spills. "Jesus Christ," Reeves muttered. They moved deeper into the house. The kitchen was worse. Dirty dishes were stacked ceiling high in the sink. Cockroaches skittered across counters thick with grime. A broken refrigerator hummed ominously in the corner, the door hanging open to reveal an interior coated with black mold. But it was the bedrooms that told the real story. Daniels pushed open a door and froze. Thin mattresses lay on the floor, covered with filthy blankets. Chains bolted to the bed frames rattled softly in the draft. A bucket in the corner sloshed with human waste. And everywhere, there were children. Gaunt faces stared up at him, eyes wide and hollow with fear. Skin clung to bone. Limbs were twisted in unnatural angles from months, years of malnourishment and confinement. None of them spoke. They simply watched, silent as ghosts. Reeves, Daniels called hoarsely, "Get back up now." The house erupted into chaos. More police arrived, sirens wailing, radios crackling. Paramedics pushed past with stretchers and oxygen tanks. Social workers hovered at the edges, clutching clipboards and looking shell-shocked. Jordan sat on the curb, wrapped in her blanket, watching it all unfold with a strange sense of detachment. It was over, wasn't it? Someone knelt beside her, a woman with kind eyes and a soft voice. "My name is Officer Parker," she said. "You're very brave. Can you tell me your name?" "Jordan," she whispered. "Jordan, we're going to take care of you, all of you." Jordan wanted to believe her. She really did. But something deep inside whispered that the nightmare wasn't over yet. Not even close. At the hospital, the true extent of the horror became clear. Doctors examined the children one by one, documenting injuries that spoke of years of neglect and abuse. Broken bones that had healed crooked. Open sores crawling with infection. Malnutrition so severe that some teenagers had the bodies of 80-year-olds. Psychological scars that ran even deeper. Jordan watched from her bed as nurses moved from one sibling to the next, their faces growing darker with each new revelation. She tried to focus on the small comforts, the feel of clean sheets against her skin, the taste of cool water on her tongue, the gentle touch of a hand smoothing her hair. But at night, when the hospital grew quiet, the memories crept in, the screams, the chains, the endless, aching hunger. And worst of all, the knowledge that David and Louise were still out there. The police were relentless. They combed through the house, documenting every horror, photographing every room, cataloging every chain and padlock. They interviewed neighbors who were full of bewildered apologies. "I never saw anything," they said. "They seemed like such a nice family. We didn't know. No one knew, no one saw." Or maybe, Jordan thought bitterly, no one wanted to see. David and Louise were arrested within hours, dragged from a dingy motel room on the edge of town. Mugshots captured their blank, uncomprehending faces. David with his greasy hair and vacant stare. Louise with her gaunt cheeks and trembling hands. They were charged with multiple counts of child abuse, false imprisonment, torture, and more. But for Jordan, the real trial was just beginning. The foster home was supposed to be a fresh start. It was a tidy 2-story house with a white picket fence and flower beds out front. Mr. and Mrs. Callahan were kind, patient people who spoke in soft voices and never raised their hands. It should have felt safe. It didn't. Jordan flinched at every sudden noise, every slammed door. She hid food in her pockets and under her mattress, unable to trust that the next meal would come. She woke screaming from nightmares she couldn't remember. The Callahans tried. They really did. But how do you heal a lifetime of horror in a few short months? One night, unable to sleep, Jordan crept downstairs. The house was dark, silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. She wandered into the kitchen, drawn by the faint glow of the refrigerator light. She opened the door and stood there, letting the cool air wash over her face. Rows of food stretched before her. Milk, fruit, sandwiches, leftovers in neat containers. ... So much food. Tears blurred her vision. She sank to the floor and wept, silent sobs racking her thin frame. Upstairs, unseen, Mrs. Callahan watched from the shadows, her heart breaking. Therapy sessions began soon after. Dr. Benton was a small woman with sharp eyes and a voice like smoke. She didn't ask direct questions, not at first. She just listened. Jordan sat on the worn leather couch, picking at a loose thread on her jeans. "Tell me about your house," Dr. Benton said one day. Jordan hesitated. "It was dark," she said finally. "Dark how?" She struggled for words. "Not just the lights. It felt wrong, like something bad lived there, something bigger than Mum and Dad." Dr. Benton nodded slowly, jotting something in her notebook. Jordan didn't know how to explain it. The way the air had seemed heavier inside, the way the walls had seemed to lean in closer every year, as if the house itself had been feeding on them. The trial loomed like a thundercloud. Jordan and her siblings were called to testify. It was the first time she had seen her parents since the night she ran. David sat hunched at the defense table, his greasy hair hanging in his face. Louise clutched a Bible in trembling hands, her lips moving soundlessly in prayer. Jordan sat stiffly in the witness box, the weight of their eyes heavy on her. "Jordan," the prosecutor said gently, "can you tell us what life was like in that house?" She swallowed hard, and then she told them everything: the hunger, the chains, the beatings, the fear. Her voice never wavered. When she finished, there was silence in the courtroom, a silence so deep and profound it seemed to suck the air from the room. And in that silence, something inside Jordan shifted. She was no longer a victim. She was a survivor. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, Jordan didn't cry. She sat with her siblings, holding their hands, feeling the weight of the past lift, if only a little. David and Louise were led away in handcuffs, their faces pale and stunned. The monster was gone, but healing, real healing, would take longer. It would take a lifetime. And so Jordan began again, slowly, painfully, beautifully. She went back to school, awkward and shy, but determined. She made friends. She learned to laugh again. She learned to trust. Some days were harder than others. Some nights the nightmares still came. But she fought because she was free, because she had survived the house of silence, because she was Jordan, and she was not broken, not anymore. Freedom was a strange thing. At first it tasted sweet, like the first sip of clean water after a lifetime of thirst. Jordan and her siblings scattered into different foster homes, different schools, different towns. They were given clothes that fit, food that filled their bellies, beds that didn't chain them down. But freedom was not the end of fear. It followed them like a shadow, clinging to their skin, whispering in the back of their minds. It lurked behind closed doors and flickered in the corner of their eyes. No matter how far they ran, it was always there, waiting, watching. Jordan sat in the back of her new classroom, staring at the textbook in front of her without seeing it. The words blurred together, meaningless symbols on a page. Mrs. Garrison was talking about something, American history, maybe. But Jordan's mind was somewhere else, somewhere darker. She flinched as the boy next to her dropped his pencil. The sharp clatter echoed like a gunshot in her ears. Her hands shook under the desk. "Breathe," she told herself. "Just breathe." But it was hard. It was always hard. How could she explain to these smiling strangers that she had lived most of her life in chains? That every sudden noise, every raised voice, every unexpected touch sent her spiraling into panic. They wouldn't understand. No one really could. Therapy helped. A little Dr. Benton taught her tricks. Count 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. Ground yourself. Stay here, stay now. Jordan practiced. She tried. Some days it worked, some days it didn't. Some days the shadows were just too strong. At night, she dreamed of the house. She dreamed of the chains rattling in the dark, of Louise's shrill laughter, of David's heavy footsteps on the stairs. She dreamed of the smell of rot and the taste of hunger. Sometimes she dreamed of something worse, something she couldn't quite name, something that had lived in the walls with them, something that had watched them suffer, something that had fed on their pain. In those dreams, the house was alive, breathing, watching. And when Jordan woke, gasping and trembling in her clean, safe bed, she could still hear it whispering her name. The media wouldn't leave them alone. Reporters camped outside their schools, their foster homes, even the courthouse. They shouted questions, shoved microphones in faces too young and too broken to understand. Jordan hated them. They didn't care about the truth. They cared about the story, the freak show, the house of horrors, they called it. They splashed her family's dirty secrets across headlines and TV screens. They twisted facts into grotesque parodies. They made Jordan a symbol, a spectacle. She wanted to scream at them. "We are not your entertainment. We are not your horror movie. We are people. We are children." One night, after a particularly brutal news segment, Jordan locked herself in the bathroom. She sat on the cold tile floor, her knees drawn to her chest, and stared at the crack in the wall. It looked like a mouth about to speak. She shivered. "You're free now," she whispered to herself. "You're safe." But it didn't feel true. Not when the past still clung to her like a second skin. Not when the shadows still whispered from the corners of her mind. Her siblings struggled too. Jessica, the oldest, turned 18 and disappeared into the city, chasing a freedom that tasted more like loneliness. Little Caleb, barely 6, refused to speak to anyone but his stuffed rabbit. Bethany, 15, bounced from home to home, her anger burning so hot that no one could contain it. They were scattered, broken, trying to survive in a world that didn't know what to do with them. Jordan missed them fiercely. She missed the whispers in the dark, the shared glances, the silent promises. "I see you. I know you. I am with you." Without them, the world felt colder. Sometimes, at night, Jordan heard tapping at her window, soft, rhythmic, insistent. When she looked, there was never anything there, just the darkness, watching, waiting. It started small, a misplaced book, a flickering light, a door that swung open on its own. Jordan told herself it was nothing, just the house settling, just her imagination, just trauma playing tricks on her mind. But deep down, she knew better. The house had followed her, or maybe she had never really left it. One night, she woke to find muddy footprints leading from her bedroom door to her bed. Small footprints, child-sized. They ended at the foot of her bed and vanished. Jordan sat frozen, staring at them, her heart a frantic drumbeat in her chest. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run, but she couldn't move. Something was here, something from the house, something that had never let go. She started keeping the light on at night. It didn't help. The shadows crept closer anyway, curling under the door, seeping through the cracks. Whispers filled the room, soft, urgent, pleading. "Come back," they said. "Come home." Jordan pressed her hands over her ears, squeezed her eyes shut. No, no, no. School grew harder. Jordan drifted through the days like a ghost, her grades slipping, her teachers' voices a distant buzz in her ears. Friends drifted away, unsure how to reach her. Even Mrs. Callahan began to look worried, her gentle smiles strained at the edges. Jordan didn't blame them. How could they understand? How could they fight what they couldn't see? The nightmares worsened. Now, in her dreams, the house chased her, its walls stretching into endless, twisting corridors, its windows like gaping mouths. She ran and ran, but the house was always there, looming behind her, whispering her name in voices that weren't human. Sometimes she saw her siblings in the dream, chained to the walls, their eyes hollow and accusing. "You left us," they said. "You ran away." She woke sobbing, the guilt a heavy stone in her chest. Then came the letters, slipped under her door at night, written in a childish, shaky hand. Come home, no address, no signature. Just those two terrible words, again and again. Come home, come home, come home. Jordan burned the first few. She tore the next ones into pieces, but they kept coming, night after night. One evening, as twilight bled into night, Jordan sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker to life. She felt it before she saw it, a presence at the edge of her vision. Slowly, she turned. A figure stood across the street. Small, thin, familiar. It was one of her sisters, or at least, it looked like her. But something was wrong, terribly wrong. The figure's head lolled at an unnatural angle, as if the neck had been broken. The eyes were too wide, too dark, too empty. The figure raised a hand and pointed at Jordan. Jordan stumbled back from the window, heart hammering. When she looked again, the street was empty. Nothing but darkness and the soft hum of the streetlights. Had she imagined it? Was she losing her mind? Or had the house truly followed her into the world, dragging its horrors with it? She didn't know. All she knew was that she wasn't safe. Not anymore. The next morning, Jordan woke to find scratches on her window. Deep, angry gouges etched into the glass, too high for any normal animal to reach. Her hands trembled as she traced the marks. They weren't random. They formed words. Come home, the same message, the same demand. Her stomach twisted. Was it a cruel prank? Some neighborhood kid playing games? Or was it something else, something worse? The house wasn't just following her, it was calling her back. Jordan tried to tell Mrs. Callahan. She showed her the scratches. She talked about the muddy footprints, the letters, the figure she saw in the night. But Mrs. Callahan just gave her that look, the one adults give when they think you're too broken to trust your own mind. It's the trauma, honey, she said gently. You're safe now. It's just bad dreams bleeding into the day. Jordan wanted to believe her. God, she wanted to. But deep inside, she knew. Some wounds don't just bleed, they rot. The visions grew stronger. Sometimes, Jordan saw the house reflected in mirrors, even though it had long since been boarded up, sealed off, left to crumble into ruin. Sometimes she heard the chains rattling under her bed, the clink and scrape of metal on wood. Sometimes she smelled it, the reek of rot and decay and despair, so strong it made her gag. The house was with her, inside her, becoming her. One afternoon, while walking home from school, Jordan found another letter waiting for her. Not under her door this time, pinned to her backpack. It was different from the others. Not just a message. A map, rough, hand-drawn lines. A crude sketch of a neighborhood. A big black X scrawled over a familiar intersection. She knew the place. It was where the old house stood, or used to. Something inside her twisted in protest. Don't go. But something stronger, something deeper, whispered back. You have to. Jordan didn't tell anyone. She just packed a flashlight, a pocket knife she found in Mr. Callahan's garage, and an old Polaroid camera. Evidence, proof. If she was going to face whatever this was, she wouldn't do it blind. She waited until the house was asleep, slipped out through her window. took the long way around to avoid the security lights. The night was thick and heavy, pressing down on her like a wet blanket. The world felt wrong, too quiet, too still, like the moment before a scream. The house was still there, sort of. It was more ruined than structure now, a sagging skeleton of wood and rot and black gaping windows. The city had put up caution tape, hammered no trespassing signs into the dead lawn. But Jordan ducked under the tape without hesitation. The house called to her. It always had. The front door was missing, torn from its hinges. The darkness inside yawned like an open mouth. Jordan clicked on her flashlight. The beam barely cut through the gloom. The air inside was colder, thicker, full of a stink that made her eyes water. Rot, mold, and something worse, something sweet and foul and old. She stepped inside. The living room was a graveyard of broken furniture and shattered memories. Jordan's flashlight swept across the wreckage, the couch where she and her sisters huddled for warmth, the table where David sometimes threw food scraps like feeding dogs. Everything was exactly as she remembered, and yet not. The walls seemed to breathe. The shadows twitched when she wasn't looking. The floor groaned under her weight, a sound almost like a sigh. She snapped a Polaroid. The camera spat out a picture with a soft whir. She shook it, waited for the image to develop. When it did, her breath caught in her throat. In the photo, something stood behind her. Something tall and thin, with hollow eyes and two long limbs. Something that wasn't there when she took the picture. Jordan stumbled backward, heart hammering. The flashlight flickered, once, twice, and then died, plunging her into darkness. She fumbled for the spare batteries she had packed. Her fingers brushed something cold, not plastic, not metal, not flesh. A hand. She screamed, jerking away, falling hard onto the floor. Something giggled in the dark, high-pitched and childish. Jordan scrambled to her feet, her breathing ragged. The giggle turned into a sob, then into a voice. "You left us," it whispered. "You promised you'd come back." Jordan ran, blind through the house, crashing into walls and broken furniture, skinning her knees and elbows. She didn't care. She had to get out. She had to. The front door slammed shut, hard enough to shake the walls. Jordan threw herself against it, pounding her fists bloody. It wouldn't budge. Behind her footsteps, tiny, shuffling, getting closer. "Stay with us," the voices whispered. "Stay forever." Hands grabbed at her, small, cold hands, pulling her back into the house. She screamed, kicking, thrashing, biting. Somehow, she broke free. She sprinted for the back door, the one that had once led to the overgrown garden. It too was gone, replaced by a solid, breathing wall. The house had trapped her. It wasn't a house anymore. It was a living thing, and it was hungry. She fled up the stairs. The wood sagged under her weight, groaning and cracking. She remembered these stairs, remembered dragging chains behind her, remembered David shouting, remembered the endless ache of hunger and fear. The memories clawed at her, dragging her down, drowning her. No. She forced herself up. At the top, the hallway stretched before her, longer than it should have been, endless and twisting. Doors lined the walls, each one identical, each one slightly ajar. Whispers leaked from within. Jordan. She stumbled past them, refusing to look, refusing to listen. She had to find a way out. One door at the end of the hall stood closed, solid, heavy. Something about it called to her, the same way the house did, the same way the darkness did. She didn't want to open it. She had to. Her hand shook as she reached for the knob. It was ice cold. She turned it. The door swung inward with a groan. Inside was a single chair, bolted to the floor. And strapped to the chair, a child. A girl, thin, pale, eyes wide and wet with terror. Jordan recognized her instantly. It was herself. Or rather, the girl she used to be. The one who never escaped. The one who was still trapped. The one the house still owned. The girl opened her mouth and screamed. Not a human scream. A deep, guttural roar that shook the walls and shattered the windows. Jordan stumbled back, clutching her ears. The house trembled. The floor split open, black vines writhing up from the depths. The walls bled. The ceiling wept. The house was dying, or being born. Somehow, through the chaos, Jordan knew what she had to do. She had to destroy the house. She had to destroy the part of herself still chained inside it. She raised the Polaroid camera, snapped a picture. The flash exploded like lightning. The girl in the chair shrieked, disintegrating into ash. The walls howled. The floor buckled. The house began to collapse. Jordan ran down the endless hall, down the crumbling stairs, through the rotting wreckage. Behind her, the house screamed. A sound of fury, of betrayal, of hunger denied. She burst through the front door as the house imploded, sucking itself into a black hole of rot and ruin. And then, silence. Jordan lay gasping on the dead lawn, staring up at the starless sky. She was free, truly free, not just from the house, from the past, from the chains, from the darkness. In her pocket, the last Polaroid. She pulled it out. The photo showed nothing but ashes. And in the corner, a tiny, almost invisible figure, waving goodbye. Jordan smiled, a real smile, the first in a long, long time. Then she stood up and walked into the night. Freedom felt hollow. For days after the house collapsed into ash, Jordan drifted through life in a haze. She went to school. She ate dinner with the Callahans. She smiled when people expected her to smile. But inside, she was empty, like something vital had been scraped out of her. She thought destroying the house would set her free. Instead, it left her hollow, a cracked shell walking through a world that no longer made sense. The nightmares didn't stop. They changed. No longer dreams of the house, of chains, of screams in the dark. Now she dreamed of herself, standing alone in an endless grey wasteland, calling out names that no one answered. Jessica, Caleb, Bethany. No answer, no voices, no life, only silence. And in that silence, a realization blooming like rot. She was alone. She had always been alone. Jessica didn't answer Jordan's texts anymore. Maybe she changed numbers. Maybe she wanted to forget. Bethany was still bouncing from foster home to foster home, growing harder and angrier with each passing day. And Caleb, sweet, broken Caleb. Jordan didn't even know where he was now, separated by the system that claimed to save them, scattered to the wind. One evening, Jordan sat by the window, staring at the night sky. A soft knock came at the door. She turned, heart skipping. Mrs. Callahan peeked in, a warm smile on her face. "Hey, sweetie," she said. "You have a visitor." Visitor, Jordan frowned. Who? Mrs. Callahan just smiled wider. "Someone from your past." The hairs on the back of Jordan's neck prickled. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. She followed Mrs. Callahan down the hall, into the living room, and froze. Standing by the fireplace was a man, tall, thin, familiar in the worst possible way. David, her foster father, the monster, alive, smiling. Jordan staggered back, heart slamming against her ribs. "No," she whispered. David's smile widened, showing too many teeth. "You can't get rid of me that easily, little bird," he said, voice low and oily. Mrs. Callahan just stood there, smiling blankly, as if she didn't see the monster in the room, as if he wasn't real. Jordan turned and ran out the door into the night. The world twisted around her, houses warping, trees bending, the stars spiraling into alien shapes. She wasn't in her world anymore. She was somewhere else. Somewhere dark, somewhere wrong. Footsteps followed her, slow, steady, relentless. David's voice floated on the wind. "You can't run from what you are. You can't kill what you carry inside." Jordan stumbled into a playground. Rusty swings creaked in the dead air. A carousel spun lazily without wind. Children's laughter echoed in the darkness, high and sharp and wrong. She clamped her hands over her ears. "No," she screamed. "I burned you. I buried you. You're dead." The shadows around her thickened. Shapes began to form. Children, but not normal children. Twisted versions of her siblings. Bethany with her mouth sewn shut. Caleb with hollow black eyes. Jessica with hands like claws. They surrounded her, whispering, blaming. "You left us. You forgot us. You killed us." Jordan fell to her knees, sobbing. "No, I tried. I tried to save you." The children closed in, cold hands brushing her skin, tearing at her clothes, at her mind, at her soul. And then a hand gripped hers, warm, strong, real. Jordan looked up. A boy stood over her, Caleb, the real Caleb, not the twisted nightmare version. He smiled, a soft, broken smile. "Come on," he said. "You don't belong here." He pulled her up. The darkness screamed in protest, but Caleb held firm, leading her out of the nightmare. Jordan blinked. Suddenly, she was back in her bed, safe, alone. Tears streamed down her face. Was it real? Was it a dream? Did it matter? The next morning, Jordan found an envelope on her pillow. No stamp, no address. Inside, a single photo. Caleb, standing outside a group home 3 towns over. Alive, waiting. Jordan knew what she had to do. She packed a bag, left a note for the Callahans. "Thank you, but I have to find my family." And then she was gone, into the dawn, chasing the only thing that mattered. Family, not the one that hurt you, the one you choose, the one you save. The journey wasn't easy. She hitched rides, walked miles, slept under bridges, but she kept going because she had to. Because some things are more important than fear. Finally, after days of walking and searching, she found it. The group home. A squat, ugly building behind chain-link fences. Children played listlessly in the yard, and among them, Caleb. Older, thinner, but alive. When he saw her, he froze. Then he ran to her, throwing himself into her arms. She held him tight, swearing she would never let go again. Later, under a sky full of honest stars, Caleb whispered, "I heard you." Jordan brushed his hair back. "Heard me. In the dark. When it was bad, I heard you calling. I followed your voice." Jordan swallowed hard against a lump in her throat. "You saved me too," she said. They sat there, 2 broken pieces stitched together by love and pain and stubborn hope. The darkness still lingered at the edges. It probably always would, but they weren't alone anymore. And sometimes that was enough. Far away in the ruins of the house, something shifted. something ancient, something hateful. It wasn't finished, not yet, but for now it slept, waiting, watching, dreaming, ... At first it felt like victory. Jordan and Caleb, together again, out of the system, breathing free air under open skies. They slept in abandoned sheds, under park benches, in cheap motels when they could scrape together enough cash. They told each other stories by firelight. They laughed, ... They cried. They tried to believe that the worst was behind them. They were wrong. It started with Caleb's dreams. At first he just mumbled in his sleep, broken, terrified words. "No, please, don't lock me in there." Then he started screaming, clawing at invisible chains, tears streaming down his face. Jordan would hold him through the worst of it, whispering that it wasn't real, that he was safe. But deep down, she knew it wasn't just nightmares. It was something more, something reaching through the cracks, something they hadn't escaped. One night, Jordan woke to find Caleb standing by the fire, his back to her, still silent. She called his name. He didn't move, didn't even seem to breathe. She approached slowly, heart hammering. When she touched his shoulder, he turned, and it wasn't Caleb's face. It was David's, leering, grinning, rotting. Jordan stumbled back, biting down a scream. Caleb blinked, and he was himself again, confused, crying. "I don't know what's happening," he sobbed. Jordan didn't either, but she had a terrible feeling. They hadn't left the darkness behind. It had followed them. It lived inside them now. The next morning, they decided they couldn't run anymore. They had to confront it, face whatever was hunting them, whatever they were carrying. They traveled back, not to the ruins of the old house. That was gone, but to something older, something deeper, the place where it had all begun. Caleb remembered a story David used to tell about the well behind the house. The well no one else could find. The well that wasn't really a well at all. A hole in the world. A mouth waiting to feed. A place where bad things were born. It took them days to find it. They wandered through the dead woods behind the ruins. Past crumbling fences. Past rusted out cars swallowed by weeds. Past memories so painful they made Jordan's teeth ache. And then they found it. It wasn't much. Just a circle of stones, half sunk into the earth, choked with dead leaves, almost invisible. But when Jordan stood over it, she felt it. The pull, the hunger, the hate. The well was awake, and it knew them. Jordan and Caleb stood at the edge, peering down into blackness. Something moved down there. Something whispered. Jordan's skin crawled. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But she didn't. She couldn't. This was their only chance. Together, they lowered a rope made from knotted sheets and vines. Jordan went first, hand over hand, descending into the dark. The air grew colder, thicker, alive. The walls of the well weren't stone. They were flesh, pale, veined, pulsing. She gagged on the smell, blood and rot and something worse. Caleb followed, his small hands trembling on the rope. At the bottom, they found a door, an impossible door, wooden, carved with symbols that hurt to look at. Jordan reached for the handle. It was slick with something wet. She forced it open and stepped through. The world beyond wasn't a room, it was a memory. Their old home, perfectly preserved, except everything was wrong. The walls bled. The furniture twitched. The windows were full of staring eyes. David sat at the kitchen table, smiling his wolf's smile. "Welcome home," he said. Caleb whimpered. Jordan pushed him behind her. "This isn't real," she said. "You're dead." David just laughed. A terrible, rattling sound. "Dead? No, little bird. I'm a part of you. I always have been." He rose from the table. His body cracked and twisted, bones rearranging into monstrous shapes. "You can't kill the past," he hissed. "You can only feed it." The walls closed in, whispering, moaning. The eyes in the windows wept black tears. Jordan's heart pounded. Her fingers tightened around the knife she had carried all this time. She didn't remember pulling it out, didn't remember stepping forward, only that she had to end this, once and for all. David lunged, faster than anything human. Jordan dodged, barely. She slashed at him, the blade slicing through flesh that wasn't flesh. David shrieked. The house shrieked with him. Black blood sprayed the walls, burning like acid. Caleb screamed. Hands dragged him toward the walls. Hands made of shadow and teeth and hate. Jordan fought toward him, slicing, slashing, screaming. Her body moved without thought, only instinct, only rage, only survival. She reached Caleb, pulled him free, shoved the knife into his hands. "Fight," she gasped. "Fight back." For a moment, Caleb just stared. Then something inside him snapped. He slashed at the shadows, screaming. A child's scream, a survivor's scream. The hands recoiled. The house shook. David roared in fury. Jordan turned back to him, breathless, bleeding. "You don't own us anymore," she said. David laughed. A horrible, broken sound. "Then why are you still afraid?" Jordan hesitated. He was right. Part of her would always be afraid. Part of her would always carry the scars. But that didn't mean she had to live in fear. She wasn't a prisoner. She wasn't a victim. She was a survivor. She drove the knife into David's heart, or where his heart should have been. The house howled. The ground split open. The world turned inside out. And then, silence. When Jordan opened her eyes, she and Caleb were lying on the forest floor. The well was gone. The woods were just woods again, empty, quiet, free. Jordan sat up slowly, helping Caleb to his feet. They were bruised, bleeding, exhausted, but alive, really alive. They walked away together, toward a future still full of unknowns, toward a life they would build with their own hands. No more chains, no more ghosts, only each other and the long, hard road ahead. Far below, deep in the earth, something stirred, watching, waiting, because some scars never heal, and some darkness never dies. They moved to a new town, small, quiet, a place no one asked questions, a place to start over. Jordan got a job at a diner. Caleb enrolled in a local school. They rented a crumbling trailer at the edge of town. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. It was enough, for a while. At night, Jordan would lie awake, listening to Caleb's soft breathing in the next room. She would tell herself, "We made it. We survived. We're free." She wanted to believe it, needed to believe it. But deep down, she felt the truth like a splinter under her skin. The darkness had left a mark on them, a permanent one. It started small. Jordan would see things out of the corner of her eye. A shadow slipping behind a tree. A flicker of movement in a mirror. A reflection that smiled when she didn't. She told herself it was stress, paranoia, ghosts of memory. But then Caleb changed. He grew withdrawn, jumpy, his eyes always bright and curious, became guarded, haunted. One night, Jordan caught him standing in the yard, barefoot in the freezing cold. staring at the woods. When she touched his shoulder, he didn't even flinch. He just whispered, "They're calling me." Jordan pulled him inside, locked the doors, closed the curtains, lit every light. She held him until he stopped shaking. But the damage was done. Something had found them. Something was calling. She needed help. Real help. Not another social worker. Not another fake family. Someone who understood the things that lived in the dark. Someone who fought them. Her search led her to a name. An old woman on the outskirts of town. Madeleine Crane. A witch, the locals whispered. A devil woman. Someone who knew too much. Jordan didn't care. She would do anything to save Caleb. Anything. She left Caleb sleeping and drove through the endless night. The woods pressed against the road, thick and suffocating. Something watched her from the trees. She didn't look, didn't dare. Madeleine's house was a crooked old thing. Shingles missing. Windows boarded up. A garden overgrown with thorns and bones. Jordan hesitated at the gate, then pushed forward. She had come too far to turn back now. Madeleine opened the door before Jordan could knock. A tiny, hunched woman with eyes like polished stones. "You're late," she said, and turned away, leaving the door open. Inside, the house smelled of herbs and ash. Strange symbols covered the walls. Candles guttered in the draft. Jordan stood awkwardly until Madeleine pointed at a chair. "Sit." "Jordan," said. Madeleine studied her like a scientist examining a rare, dangerous animal. "You carry the stain," she said finally. Jordan blinked. "The what?" "The thing that fed on you. The thing that broke you. It left its mark." Jordan swallowed hard. "Can it be removed?" Madeleine's smile was a thin, cruel thing. "No, but it can be. Buried." "How?" Madeleine leaned closer. "You must finish what you started." Jordan's heart thudded. "I already did. I killed him. I destroyed the house." Madeleine shook her head. "You burned the cage, not the beast. The beast still lives." She handed Jordan a bundle wrapped in black cloth. Inside, bones, tiny, twisted, still warm. "You must find the heart," Madeleine said, "and you must kill it, truly." Jordan gripped the bundle. A terrible certainty filled her. This wasn't over, not even close. When Jordan returned home, the trailer was dark. Silent, too silent. The door hung open. The lights were smashed, and Caleb was gone. Panic clawed up her throat. She ran from room to room, screaming his name. Nothing. Only the cold, only the dark. A note lay on the kitchen table, written in a hand she hadn't seen since the nightmare days. "Come home, little bird." Jordan drove, faster than she ever had before. Back to the woods, back to the place where it all began. The trees swallowed her, branches scraping the car like claws. The road vanished. She abandoned the car, ran on foot, through mud and mist and memory, until she found it, the house, somehow, impossibly, standing again. Whole, waiting, breathing. Lights burned in the windows. Shadows moved inside. Children's laughter drifted on the wind. High and sharp and wrong. Jordan gripped the bundle of bones, her weapon, her curse, her only hope, and stepped through the door. Inside, time folded. Walls shifted, floors melted. The air buzzed with unseen flies. The house knew her. It welcomed her, home at last. At the end of the hall stood David, smiling, holding Caleb by the throat. Caleb's eyes were wide with terror. His feet dangled inches off the floor. David's voice was soft, almost loving. "You can have him back," he said. "If you stay, if you belong." Jordan's hand tightened round the bones. She took a step forward. David laughed. "You're mine," he said. "You always have been. You always will be." The bones burned in her hand. White fire, blinding. Jordan screamed and hurled them at David. The bones struck his chest, sank into him, burrowed deep. David's smile faltered. His skin cracked. Black blood poured from his mouth. The house screamed. The walls buckled. The floor split open. Fire roared from the cracks. David shrieked. A sound of pure hate, pure fear. Caleb fell to the floor. Jordan grabbed him, pulled him to his feet. Together, they ran. The house collapsed behind them, screaming, burning, dying. They didn't stop running until they reached the road, until the trees thinned, until the sky opened, until they could breathe. They collapsed together in the dirt, laughing, crying, alive. The sun rose over the shattered woods, over the dead house, over the broken chains, over to survivors who refused to belong to the dark. Not anymore, never again. But deep beneath the earth, in roots and rot and bone, something watched, something waited. Because evil doesn't die, it only sleeps and dreams. The world was quieter now. The sun, rising slowly over the horizon, cast long shadows through the trees. The woods that once felt alive with malice were now still, silent. Jordan and Caleb sat side by side on the side of the road, bruised, exhausted, but alive. They stared out at the distant hills, the wind brushing against their skin. For the first time in years, Jordan could almost convince herself that it was over, that the nightmare was finished, that they had finally broken free. But deep down, in the hollow of her chest, something still pulsed with dread. The darkness didn't leave easily. It had followed them through the cracks, through the years, through every broken house and every cold night. It lived in them now, waiting. They didn't speak for a long time. Neither of them needed to. Caleb's hand, still warm and trembling, rested in hers. The touch was enough to remind her that they had something real, something they could fight for. The past was a shadow, but it didn't have to define their future. Jordan finally broke the silence. "We have to go home." Caleb looked at her, his brow furrowing. Home. They didn't have a home anymore. The world they once knew was shattered, torn apart by the house that refused to die. There was no place to return to. But Jordan didn't mean the town or the ruined house. She meant somewhere deeper, somewhere within them both. "We can start over," she said softly, "but only if we bury everything for good." Caleb nodded, though his eyes were still clouded with confusion. It was time to confront the truth. The house hadn't been their only enemy. The beast, the darkness, the thing that had fed on them. It was part of them now, woven into their blood and memories. To truly end this, to rid themselves of the curse, they had to face the thing that had always lived inside them. It was time to burn the last bridge. They made their way back to the edge of the forest, the place where the house had stood, now only a scar in the earth. The ground was still blackened, charred by fire and broken dreams. No trace remained of the once dreadful structure, save for a few twisted nails buried deep beneath the soil. Jordan and Caleb knelt in the dirt, side by side. Neither of them spoke. They knew what they had to do. With a deep breath, Jordan pulled the bundle of bones from her bag, the same bones Madeline had given her. They were cold to the touch, but there was something undeniably alive about them. They thrummed in her hands, like a pulse she could feel deep in her chest. "This is it," she whispered. "We finish it now." Caleb didn't argue. He didn't need to. They had been running from the darkness long enough. It was time to end the chase. Together, they dug. The soil was soft and wet, a grotesque reminder of what had once been. They dug until their hands bled, until the earth seemed to claw back at them. And then they found it. The heart, the rotten, blackened thing that had been buried beneath the house, pulsing with death and hunger. It was barely recognizable, a thing that had once been human, now twisted into something monstrous. Jordan recoiled, but Caleb didn't flinch. He reached into the hole, his fingers curling around the heart, feeling its cold weight. "Now," he said. Jordan nodded. Without a word, she drew the knife from her waist. The blade gleamed in the dim light, sharp and ready. Together, they brought it down. The heart exploded in a shower of blackened blood, splattering them both. And for a moment, nothing happened. The air was still, silent. Then, the ground shook. The trees trembled. The earth itself groaned with an ancient, terrible power. Jordan and Caleb held their breath as the world around them began to collapse. The forest split open, as though the very roots of the earth were being torn apart. Shadows rose from the cracks, long serpentine figures that writhed and twisted like smoke. A terrible force seemed to lift from the ground, pulling everything toward it. "Caleb," Jordan screamed. He grabbed her hand, and together they ran. The world around them spun out of control. The sky turned black, clouds swirling like a hurricane. The trees snapped and splintered like dry wood, falling to the ground with bone-shaking crashes. Through the chaos, they ran. Through the storm of the past, through the storm of everything they had tried to bury. The earth trembled one last time, and then silence, complete, absolute. Jordan opened her eyes. She was lying in the dirt, her head spinning. Caleb was beside her. Both of them were covered in dirt, blood, and sweat, but alive, alive. The storm was gone. The shadows had vanished, and the house was finally gone, for good. The morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a soft light over the wreckage. Jordan and Caleb rose, dusting themselves off. The world was different now. The weight that had pressed on their souls for so long was gone. There was nothing left to fight, nothing to run from, only the quiet. They didn't speak again. There was no need. The silence between them was no longer oppressive. It wasn't the absence of life. It was the space where they could breathe. And they did, deeply. For the first time in years, they were free. Jordan looked at Caleb, her hand reaching out to squeeze his. "Let's go," she said, her voice steady. "Yeah," Caleb replied, a small, tired smile pulling at his lips. "Let's go." They walked away from the place that had once consumed them, hand in hand, toward a future unknown, but for the first time, full of possibility. And though the shadows of the past would always be there, lurking at the edges of their memories, they had won. They had survived. They had broken the cycle, and nothing, no matter how dark, would ever hold them again.